Hey guys, we're gonna do a quick video on assignments of contracts, double closings. I got my dear friend Taryn, another lead mentor here, and we're gonna kind of go through the process pretty quickly of the benefits of doing one versus the other and some of the pitfalls. So, do you want to kind of talk about your favorite assignment of contracts?
Yeah, I mean, I love assignment of contracts. At the end of the day, you don't have to worry about closing costs, right? So whatever you're assigning it for, you get. Where double closings, for instance, you have to close on one side and you have to close on the other side, so you incur all these extra fees that eats into your profit. Um, when you're deciding which one to do, like whether you should do it in assignment or double close, um, with an assignment of contract, the end buyer and the seller are on the same HUD, right? So your fee is going to be there as an assignment for $10,000, and the seller and the buyer are going to see that. So in situations where you've, negotiated a killer deal and you've sold it for a lot more, it's typically industry standard to double close it so that your seller doesn't see that you're actually making $30,000, $40,000, and your end buyer doesn't get pissed off because he could have had it for lower, right? So our general rule of thumb is about $15,000. Anything below 15,000 will assign, anything above 15,000 will double close. And it really comes down to the relationship you have with your seller and your buyer, whether or not you think you can get away with a little bit more, right? Because if you double close here in Florida, it's typically going to be about $7,000 between closing costs and costs of money transactional funding. That is going to come out of your deal profit. So, if I've got a good relationship with my seller and buyer, I might go for a $20,000 assignment fee. So what about you, Anish? What do you like to do?
Yeah. So I mean, I like double closings because it usually means I'm making more money. So that's number one. But a couple of things about the assignment of contracts, and you brought up a really good point that the assignment fee will be on the closing statement. So the example I like using is, Taryn, you're the seller. You wanted $120,000 and I negotiated it for 100. And I said, my money, it's really tight. The numbers really don't work. Then I sent it out on my buyer's list, right, for 140. And now they want, they say, okay, Nish, the most I could do is 130. And now my assignment fee is $30,000. So imagine as the seller, see this fee for $30,000. So you're not going to be happy. You might not sign, number one, which will lead to more problems. My buyer might say, Anish, you rascal, you told me your numbers are tight. Look how much money you're making. So you could easily lose the deal, or they could renegotiate it very quickly. The other benefits is that, you're putting a limited deposit down. I know you've been seeing it online, on YouTube University, where, hey, you don't need to put a deposit. In Florida, you do need to put a deposit down to make it a valid contract. So I think that's always important. So you do need some money when it comes to that. So, that's number one. The double closings, just like you said, one of my favorite parts is that the seller has no idea. You got your $100,000, you're happy, you're going on a cruise, you're going on a spending spree. And then my buyer at 130 doesn't know how much I bought it for until it's too late, if he goes back to the tax records. And it makes it a win-win. Two sets of closing costs. The key is you do need the money for the deal. So you want to make sure you really do have the $100,000 to close. You want to work with experienced title companies. Luckily, we have a team of title companies with BPM RIA that are fantastic on the process. A couple other quick tidbits also is that if it's a foreclosure or short sale, you do have to close. No chance of assignment of contract, meaning the bank's already losing money. They're not going to say, Taryn, you investor are going to make how much? Heck no. So it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 or 2,000, they're taking a loss and they do have to approve the HUD. So I think that's always important too. I know there's some other tricks where you've actually gotten more than what we're talking about, the $15,000 on assignment fees. You want to share a couple of those tricks?
Yeah, one of my favorite trick is to, one of the downfalls of an assignment of contract is that the end buyer is stepping into your position on the first contract, right? So if whatever I agree to, the end buyer is going to have to uphold. So if I said to the seller, yeah, no problem, you can stay there for 2 months after closing, then my end buyer is now agreeing to that. And so they have to see that original contract. And so they're going to know what I have it for. and they're going to know what I'm making on it. And so a lot of times, if they're not locked in prior to that, they'll renegotiate it. Now you can send out the contract with redacted, where you like black out the contract price and the inspection days and stuff like that. But what I like to do is I like to do a secondary contract, the B2C contract, from me to the end buyer, stating how much we've agreed on with a 0-day inspection period. And in the additional terms, I say that the buyer and seller agree that this is a double close and or an assignment, and agrees to sign the assignment of contract at seller's request. So in other words, at my request. And what that does, it enables me, once I have his earnest money in and he's locked in, he's already agreed to sign the assignment of contract regardless of what it says. He has to by law now. And so by doing that, I can get away with bigger assignment fees. Now, I still have to be cognizant of the seller and whether or not I have a good enough rapport with them to be able to explain that away. And so one of the things, we have one on the table at the moment, is going to be a $32,000 assignment fee. And I'm coaching the student to tell the seller, like, look, because we're moving the sale date, the closing up, right, which is really important to them, the way we're making it work is by assigning it to one of our partner companies. And, you know, if they ask about the fee, this is something that we just do for accounting purposes to reduce the tax liability down the road. And that normally settles the seller, and they'll just sign because they're getting what they want. And we make sure to reiterate, like, look, your bottom line, what we agreed upon is what you're getting, so that they're happy in that situation. And the other thing that I wanted to touch upon is, like, in Florida, we talk about we have to come to closing with money, regardless if it's a double close, we're transactional funding it, right? Well, that's considered a wet funding. And so Florida is a wet funding state, and it's so important to use good title companies, because you will find title companies that will do what they call a dry closing, which means that you don't have to bring your money to closing, and that you can use the end buyer's money to fund the A side of the closing, which effectively saves you thousands of dollars, especially at a high price range. You know, transactional funding is normally about 1 to 2% of your deal. So if you're doing a $500,000 house, that's $5 to 10 grand, right? So you want to make sure that you're staying within the laws of your state. Just because somebody can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it. And if you go outside of Florida, because I do a lot of virtual wholesaling, so I work in other states, it's one of the first things that I ask my title company, you know, are you doing dry funding or wet funding? So for instance, in St. Louis, I can double close all my deals because it doesn't cost me anything. They pass through the closing costs. The end buyer pays for the first contract. And so it's the same thing to me, basically, as an assignment of contract. But here in Florida, we can't do that. We have to bring money to closing. So that's why this little tip of, you know, putting that additional term allows those two contracts to be part of one another, and allows you to be able to have bigger assignment fees.
Absolutely. And so one of, you know, some of the little things that you do need to know, right, is obviously you have to put a deposit down. When you're actually find that other buyer, and whether you're assigning it or double closing, you want to make sure that the deposit is more. We're averaging $10,000 a deposit when we're selling it to our person. On average, we're putting $500 to $1,000 down with the seller, so we're protected. You want to make sure you have inspection days. Those are real marketing days for us to find a buyer. When we're actually selling it, we're giving them 0 days inspection. The reason we could do that, we have a 10,000 plus cash buyers list, and all the good buyers down here, they could walk a house and they have no problem, meaning they'll wire the money, they like it, it hits all the spots. I thought it's important that what you said about, you know, agreeing to the terms, right? So if you are paying the seller's closing cost and you're doing a double closing, make sure your end buyer is paying your closing costs. Otherwise, you could easily wind up with almost 3 or 4 sets of closing costs. So you want to match the contracts. So I think that's also important. As we mentioned, foreclosures or short sales, you do have to close on the properties. So you do have to buy it. Sometimes there's deed restrictions, and deed restrictions, sometimes the lender will make you hold it for 30 days or 90 days. So you want to make sure you know all that up front. Both strategies are fantastic. You got to know which one to use when. Again, you know, if the deal profit is way too small, when I say small, 5,000, 6,000, if you do the double closing, you're going to do a nice job of making no profit. So I think that's always important, that you figure out the strategy up front. You know, and there'll be some other little things that you're going to have to make sure as all the pieces of the puzzle come together, because if you work with a title company that is not familiar with double closings, it might be chaotic, is number one. Number two, it is illegal, right? So I always hear this all the time, double closings are illegal. It's illegal if the second closing is doing a Fannie Mae, FHA, conventional loan. If it's cash or hard money, not an issue. So you want to make sure, you know, if you're selling it to someone, that's why we go after cash buyers, or they're using hard money. So we don't have to worry about, you know, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or, you know, FHA or VA loans, because that is mortgage fraud. So, you know, you want to make sure you're under the radar. You want to do this the right way. Any little last tidbits that you think that, you know?
Yeah, if you're going to talk, if you're going to call up a title company to see if they are investor friendly, they may refer to a double close as a simultaneous close. That's another term for it. And it's really that simple. It's just asking them if they've done double closing or simultaneous closings. And if they are like, huh, then you don't have the right person, you know. Make sure you look, if you're, you know, RIAs always have title companies that are investor friendly, and make sure you qualify them and ask them, you know, these kind of questions prior to you giving them the deal. It'll make your closing go so much smoother. And the last thing that I will say is that when you are doing a double close, we have done double closes where the, you know, the seller side is at one location and the buyer side's at another location. It makes a huge difference to the smooth transaction if it's at one location, if you can make it work. If, you know, if the buyer is hard pressed that he wants to be at a different location, you know, like his title company type of thing, then so be it. But it does really make a difference if you can do them both at the same title company. And that's why it's so important to have a good title company that knows how to keep them separate. We had one that was 3 closings on the same day, an A to B, a B to C, and a C to D. And so if your title agent sends the wrong documents to the wrong person, that closing is not going to happen. And then lastly, rapport building is so important when you're deciding your strategy. You know, I'll double close something for $7,000 if I know my seller is going to be a pain, right? If I know that he's gonna, like you can kind of see that they're antagonistic, I don't have a big rapport with them and whatnot, I would rather double close and lose that money and make, you know, 5 or 6 grand that way than I would making 10 or 15 by assigning if I think the deal's going to be at jeopardy. So rapport building, knowing what your buyers, you know, if the buyer is going to count your money, the seller is going to count your money, that sort of thing is huge in deciding which strategy you think is going to get the deal to the finish line.
Yeah, and obviously being part of BPM RIA, we have 3 to 5 title companies that are super investor friendly. Just ask us; they're all great for different things. Also, I would tell everyone to, you know, make sure you check out the fees. So you know what the fees are, get a fee schedule up front. That'll make a big difference for you. And since you're actually in our coaching program, you don't have to worry about money. We got you covered on the money. So just a quick little, yeah, exactly, right? So just a quick little strategy on the differences between double closings, assignments, or contracts. They're both wins. We like both of them. And again, we're just trying to make real estate investing simple again. So see you at the next video.